I'm Leona, 35, and last weekend, my role as the family's doormat, yeah, it spectacularly imploded. The peace I'd been killing myself to maintain, it shattered into a full-on family betrayal at my own birthday party. My mother and sister, Paige, they didn't just cross a line, they demanded I eat their poison, literally, and when I refused, the room went dead silent. "You're overreacting as usual," my mother snapped, with everyone staring like I'd lost my mind. But here's the tea. Their cruelty didn't break me, it woke me up. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to rewrite my entire story. A quick note: this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The party was at my house, fairy lights twinkling over the backyard, a playlist humming softly. I'd spent hours arranging platters, forcing smiles despite the dread knotting my stomach. My family's gatherings always carried an edge, but this was my day. Zoe, my 12-year-old daughter, darted around, her braids bouncing as she helped stack napkins. She's my heart, sharp as a tack, always watching. I caught her glancing at me, her brown eyes flickering with something, worry maybe? I brushed it off. The cake sat on the table, a triple-layer chocolate monstrosity my mother had insisted on baking. "It's tradition," she'd said, her smile too tight. Paige hovered nearby, fussing over candles, her manicured nails glinting. Everyone was there, cousins, aunts, uncles, chatting over wine, their voices a warm buzz. I felt almost normal, almost wanted. Then Zoe tugged my sleeve, pulling me toward the kitchen. Her grip was urgent, her voice a whisper. "Mom, don't eat the cake." I froze, her words slicing through the party's hum. "What?" I asked, crouching to her level. Her lips trembled, but her eyes were steady. "Grandma and Paige, they put something in it. Something bad." My chest tightened, a cold wave washing over me. I glanced at the cake, its glossy frosting now menacing. My mother's laugh rang out from the yard, sharp and carefree. Paige adjusted her scarf, avoiding my gaze. I forced a smile, ruffled Zoe's hair, and whispered, "Stay close, okay?" The party continued, but I was already spiraling, my mind racing to piece together why my own family would sabotage my birthday. The answer was coming, and it would change everything. The backyard chatter faded as I stood in the kitchen, Zoe's warning echoing in my head, my mind clawing at memories of a lifetime spent invisible. Growing up, I was the shadow in Paige's spotlight. My family treated her like the sun, while I was the afterthought. I remember my high school art award, a watercolor I poured my soul into. Mom barely glanced at it, but Paige's cheerleading trophy got a glass case. "Paige is going places," Dad would say, his hand on her shoulder while I sat alone with my sketchbook. At 16 I saved up for a used car, but Mom borrowed the money for Paige's prom dress. "Family helps family," she said, her tone final. I never saw a dime back. I'd bring home straight A's. Paige's B's were remarkable under pressure. "My college scholarship?" "That's nice, Leona," Mom said, distracted, while Paige's sorority acceptance earned a weekend celebration. I learned to shrink, to expect less. My achievements erased by Paige's glow. Even when I started my own graphic design business, scraping by to build it, Mom called it a hobby while funding Paige's boutique. "She's got vision," Mom said, dismissing my late nights coding websites. I swallowed the hurt, believing it was my role to support, to sacrifice. Zoe changed that. Her birth at 23 woke me up. I had to fight for her, for us. But even then, Mom would say, Paige would have been a better mother. Her eyes on my messy apartment. Paige, childless and carefree, was the golden child. I was the workhorse. I'd send money for family vacations I wasn't invited to, my checks cashed without a thank you. At Christmas, I'd watch Paige unwrap gifts I'd paid for, my own unwrapped by Zoe in secret, her tiny hands tearing paper with glee. Those moments kept me going, but the weight of being unseen never lifted. Now, standing in my kitchen, Zoe's words, "something bad," ripped open those wounds. My mother's cake, Paige's smug hovering, felt like another erasure, but worse. I glanced at Zoe, her face tight with fear, her small hand clutching mine. She'd seen what I hadn't, her loyalty a quiet rebellion against their neglect. My heart pounded, the old pain raw, every ignored achievement, every stolen dollar, every forced smile. I wasn't just the family doormat, I was their target. The realization burned, my fingers tightening around Zoe's. I'd spent my life proving my worth to people who'd never see it, and now they'd crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Her loyalty cracked something open in me. All those years of being dismissed, of giving until I was empty, and my daughter saw it all. She'd carried this secret to protect me, her small shoulders bearing a weight I'd never meant for her. I pulled her close, her hair brushing my cheek, and whispered, "You're my hero." The party's laughter outside felt like a mockery now. My mother and Paige's betrayal sharpening into focus. Zoe's truth was my turning point. I wasn't just a victim of their games. I had someone who believed in me. The cake sat on the counter, its frosting gleaming like a trap, and I knew I had to act before their plan unraveled me completely. Zoe's revelation hung heavy as I stepped back into the backyard, the fairy lights casting a false glow over the party. The day before, I'd been wrestling with a mix of dread and duty, knowing my 35th birthday would bring the usual family tension. The cruise loomed large. Paige's grand plan, a family getaway I'd helped fund but wasn't invited to. I'd overheard Mom on the phone weeks ago, her voice syrupy as she gushed about Paige's vision for the trip. When I asked if Zoe and I were included, she'd laughed, brushing it off. "Oh, Leona, it's just a small thing," she said, her tone implying I was greedy for asking. I'd bitten my tongue, the familiar sting of exclusion settling in. Now as I scanned the yard, the pieces clicked. Mom's insistence on baking the cake, Paige's nervous fidgeting with her scarf. They'd planned to sideline me, literally. My hands shook as I refilled a guest's wine glass, forcing a smile. Zoe stayed close, her eyes tracking Mom, who was holding court near the dessert table, her laughter too loud. Paige hovered nearby, rearranging candles on the cake with exaggerated care, her lips pursed. I caught her glancing at Mom, a quick nod passing between them. My stomach churned, not just from their betrayal but from the weight of tomorrow's absence. The cruise was their escape, and I was the obstacle. I'd spent the day before distracted, my mind on my design business, which was teetering on a breakthrough, a major client contract that could secure Zoe's future. I hadn't told anyone but her, guarding it like a fragile flame. Now that secrecy felt like armor. As I moved through the party, I felt their eyes, cousins chatting unaware, an aunt patting my arm, oblivious. I wanted to scream to shatter their perfect evening, but I needed proof. Zoe tugged my hand, her fingers cold. "You okay, Mom?" she whispered. I nodded, though my chest felt like it might crack open. The cake sat like a centerpiece, its frosting a mocking perfection. I could almost hear Mom's voice. "Eat it, Leona, it's tradition." Tradition, another word for obligation, for erasing me. I glanced at Zoe, her face pale but resolute, and felt a surge of resolve. I'd play their game for now, smile through the charade, but I was done being their pawn. The party buzzed on, but I was already planning my next move, my heart racing with a mix of fear and fury. Tomorrow's cruise might be their victory, but tonight, I'd start unraveling their lie. The backyard pulsed with chatter, but every laugh felt like a needle as I wove through the crowd, clutching a tray of appetizers to steady my hands. Zoe's warning about the cake burned in my mind, and now I saw the party for what it was, a stage for Mom and Paige's performance. Mom stood by the dessert table, her silver hair catching the fairy lights, her smile wide as she recounted Paige's latest boutique success. Guests nodded, charmed, while Paige basked, her hands gesturing animatedly. I approached with the tray and Mom's eyes flicked to me, her smile tightening. "Leona, you're so helpful," she said, the word dripping with condescension, like I was a hired server, not her daughter. Paige chimed in, her voice syrupy. "Yeah, Leona, always the reliable one. Too bad you're so busy with, what is it? Your little art thing?" Her laugh was sharp, and a few cousins chuckled, unaware of the barb. I forced a grin, my fingers tightening around the tray until my knuckles whitened. "It's graphic design, Paige," I said, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. She shrugged, turning to an aunt with a mock whisper. "She's so serious about it." More laughs. My face burned, but I kept moving, offering bruschetta to guests who barely looked at me. Zoe hovered nearby, her eyes darting between me and the cake, her small hands twisting the hem of her dress. I caught her gaze, nodding slightly to reassure her, but my heart pounded. Every backhanded compliment, every dismissive glance was a reminder of my place in their script. "Leona, the invisible workhorse." Mom called out, "Leona dear, come cut the cake soon. We can't wait forever." Her tone was playful, but her eyes were cold, calculating. Paige adjusted a candle, her smirk barely hidden. I set the tray down, my hands trembling, and murmured to Zoe, "Stay by me." She nodded, her face pale but fierce. The guests gathered, their chatter softening, expecting the usual birthday ritual. I felt their eyes, oblivious to the trap waiting in that chocolate frosting. Mom's hand rested on Paige's shoulder, their unity a silent taunt. I'd endured their jabs all my life, but this was different. Calculated, cruel. My pulse raced as I realized the cake wasn't just a prank, it was their way of keeping me out, sick and sidelined, while they sailed away on my dime. I straightened, forcing a smile, but inside, I was done playing their game. The next move was mine, and it would shift everything. The fairy lights flickered as I stood frozen by the dessert table, the cake looming like a loaded weapon, its frosting gleaming under the soft glow. Zoe's hand brushed mine, her fingers cold, and I felt her trembling beside me. The guests' chatter dulled, their eyes on me, expecting the birthday girl to slice the cake. Mom clapped her hands, her voice bright. "Leona, let's get this party started." Paige smirked, nudging the knife closer, her manicured nails catching the light. My stomach twisted, Zoe's words, "They put something in it," echoing like a drumbeat. I needed to know, but I couldn't let them see my suspicion. "Zoe, sweetie, help me with the plates," I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside. She nodded, her braids bouncing as she followed me to the kitchen, away from the crowd. The door swung shut, muffling the party's hum, and I knelt to her level, my hands on her shoulders. "Tell me exactly what you heard," I whispered, my eyes searching hers. She swallowed, her voice barely audible. "I was in Grandma's kitchen yesterday. She told Paige to add the laxative to make you sick so you'd miss the cruise." "They laughed, Mom? They said you'd never know." Her lip quivered, but her gaze held steady, fierce with loyalty. My chest tightened, a mix of rage and heartbreak. My own mother, my sister, plotting to humiliate me on my birthday to keep me from a trip I'd helped pay for. I pulled Zoe into a hug, her small frame shaking against mine. "You're so brave," I murmured, my voice thick. I stood, my hands clenching, unclenching as I glanced at the cake through the kitchen window. It sat innocently, surrounded by smiling relatives, but now I saw it for what it was. A weapon meant to erase me again. I grabbed a small knife and a plastic container, my movements deliberate. "Stay here," I told Zoe, who nodded, her eyes wide. Back in the yard I smiled tightly, avoiding Mom's expectant gaze. "Just grabbing a sample for later," I said, slicing a tiny piece of cake and slipping it into the container. Paige's smile faltered, her fingers twisting her scarf. Mom's laugh was too sharp. "Don't be silly, Leona. Eat it now," she said, her tone edged with something dark. I met her eyes, my pulse racing, and saw the flicker of unease. They knew I was onto them, but they didn't know how far I'd go. The party hummed on, but I was already planning my next step, the truth burning in my pocket like a lit fuse. The container with the cake sample felt heavy in my pocket as I moved through the backyard. The party's chatter a distant hum against the roar in my head. Zoe stayed close, her hand brushing mine, her eyes darting to Mom and Paige, who were now whispering near the dessert table. Their heads snapped up as I approached, Mom's smile too wide, Paige's fingers fidgeting with her earrings. I forced a laugh, passing out plates to keep my hands busy. "Big day tomorrow, huh?" I said, my voice light, testing them. Mom's eyes narrowed briefly. "Oh, the cruise will be lovely," she said, her tone syrupy. Paige nodded, avoiding my gaze. I needed proof, something undeniable, before I could confront them. Excusing myself to check on the drinks, I slipped into the house, Zoe trailing me. In the quiet of my home office, I shut the door and pulled out the container, my hands trembling as I broke off a crumb of cake. I'd seen enough medical dramas to know laxatives weren't invisible. Some left traces, a bitter taste or an odd texture. I hesitated, then dabbed the crumb on my tongue, spitting it out instantly. A sharp chemical bitterness lingered, unnatural for chocolate frosting. My heart raced. This wasn't a prank, it was deliberate. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and called my friend Sarah, a pharmacist who lived nearby. "Can you test something for me?" I whispered, explaining quickly. Sarah's voice was calm but urgent. "Bring it over now." I tucked the container into my purse, my mind spinning. Zoe watched, her face pale. "What if they find out?" she asked, her voice small. I knelt, cupping her face. "They won't, not yet," I said, my voice firm despite the fear clawing my chest. I hugged her tightly, her warmth grounding me. Back outside, I rejoined the party, my smile a mask. Sarah texted, "Drop it off after the party. I'll run a basic analysis." I nodded to myself, slipping the phone into my pocket. Mom was now slicing the cake for guests, her laughter loud, performative. Paige handed out pieces, her eyes flicking to me, then away. I declined a slice, citing a stomach thing, and caught their quick glance, nervous, calculating. The confirmation was coming, and with it, the end of their game. My pulse thrummed, not just with anger but with a strange clarity. For years I'd let them chip away at me, but this betrayal was too far. The cake wasn't just poisoned, it was the final straw, and I was ready to snap it. The backyard was a blur of laughter and clinking glasses, but my focus was razor sharp as I stood near the dessert table, the container's weight in my purse a silent accusation. Mom was serving cake, her smile unwavering, while Paige chatted with an uncle, her laugh too loud. Zoe clung to my side, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Sarah's text. "It's a laxative, targeted dose, not lethal but strong," burned in my mind, proof of their betrayal now undeniable. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady as I stepped forward, raising my voice just enough to cut through the noise. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" The chatter died, heads turning, eyes curious. Mom froze, a slice of cake halfway to a plate, her smile faltering. Paige's hand stilled on her wineglass, her eyes narrowing. I took a breath, my voice calm but firm. "I need to share something about this cake," I said, pulling the container from my purse and holding it up. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Mom, Paige, you worked so hard on it, didn't you?" Their faces paled, Mom's mouth opening then closing. I continued, my tone steady. "Funny thing, Zoe overheard you planning to add a laxative to make me too sick for the cruise I helped pay for." Gasps broke the silence. My cousin Jenna's jaw dropped. An aunt clutched her necklace. Mom stammered, "Leona, that's ridiculous." But her voice cracked. Paige's face flushed, her fingers gripping her scarf. "You're lying," she spat, but her eyes darted to Mom, betraying her. I held up my phone, showing Sarah's text to the crowd. "Tested and confirmed, a deliberate dose, just for me." The yard went silent, the air thick with shock. My uncle shook his head, muttering, "That's low." I turned to Mom and Paige, my voice low but cutting. "I've given you everything, money, time, my silence, and you repay me with poison?" Tears pricked my eyes, but I stood tall. "I'm done." I took Zoe's hand, her small fingers squeezing mine, and walked toward the house, the crowd parting. Mom called after me, "Leona, you're ruining everything," but her voice was desperate. Small, I didn't look back. Inside, I leaned against the door, Zoe hugging me tightly, her face pressed to my side. The betrayal stung, but exposing them felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Their plan had failed, and I was finally free to rewrite the rules. Inside the house, the silence was a balm after the backyard's chaos. The fairy lights glow now a faint shimmer through the window. Zoe's arms stayed wrapped around me, her breath warm against my side, and I sank onto the couch, my legs shaky from the confrontation. My phone buzzed. Texts from cousins, some shocked, some apologetic, but I ignored them. Instead, I looked at Zoe, her eyes bright with a mix of pride and worry. "You okay, Mom?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, pulling her close, her braids tickling my cheek. Then the doorbell rang, and my heart lifted as I saw Sarah and my best friend, Mia, through the peephole. I opened the door and Sarah's arms were around me before I could speak, her pharmacist's lab coat still on from her rush over. "You did it," she whispered, her voice fierce. Mia, holding a bottle of wine and a box of Zoe's favorite cookies, grinned. "Heard you dropped a truth bomb out there." We laughed, the sound shaky but real, and settled in the living room. Zoe curled up beside me munching a cookie, her shoulders relaxing. Sarah poured wine, her eyes warm. "You stood up to them, Leona. That's huge." Mia nodded, squeezing my hand. "You're not alone, you know." Their presence was a stark contrast to the backyard's cold charade. Mom and Paige had built a world where I was the outsider, but here with Sarah, Mia, and Zoe, I was seen. We talked late, the conversation light, Zoe giggling over school stories, Mia teasing Sarah about her terrible dating app luck. But beneath it, there was a quiet strength, a bond forged not by blood but by choice. Sarah recounted testing the cake, her outrage matching mine. "They thought they'd get away with it," she said, shaking her head. Mia added, "They don't deserve you." Zoe yawned, her head on my lap, and I stroked her hair, feeling a warmth I hadn't in years. These were my people, Zoe with her fierce loyalty, Sarah with her steady support, Mia with her unyielding humor. The family outside, still reeling from my words, felt like a distant memory. I didn't need their approval anymore. This room, this moment was my real home, built on trust, not obligation. As Zoe dozed, I looked at Sarah and Mia, my voice low. "Thank you for being here." Their smiles were enough. The night stretched on, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. The morning after the party, sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, illuminating Zoe as she ate cereal, her spoon clinking softly. The house felt quieter, lighter, like it was finally mine. My phone sat silent, no calls from Mom or Paige, just a few texts from cousins, their apologies tinged with awkwardness. I didn't reply. Instead, I sipped coffee, my hands steady for the first time in days, and made a decision: no more playing their game. I'd spent years funneling money and energy into their demands, Paige's boutique, Mom's emergencies. But that ended now. I opened my laptop, my fingers hovering over the banking app. Years of loans flashed through my mind: $5,000 for Paige's store lease, $2,000 for Mom's car repair, countless smaller sums, all unreturned. I logged in, my jaw tight, and froze their access to my accounts. No more automatic transfers, no more family obligations. My savings, hard-earned from late nights designing, were mine. Zoe watched, her eyes curious. "What are you doing, Mom?" she asked. I smiled, closing the laptop. "Drawing a line, kiddo." Next, I drafted an email to Mom and Paige, my fingers steady as I typed. "I'm done funding your lives," I wrote, keeping it short, final. "Don't contact me for money or favors." I hit send, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with relief. Zoe grinned, sensing the shift. "Good," she said, her voice firm. I ruffled her hair, then called my lawyer, a friend from college, to discuss protecting my assets. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice calm. "They can't touch you now." Later, I sat Zoe down, her hands folded on the table. "If they call, we don't answer," I said. She nodded, her face serious. "I don't want to see them either." My chest ached at her strength, but I felt a surge of pride. I blocked their numbers, my fingers lingering on the screen. A final severing. The cruise sailed without me, and I didn't care. My world was here, with Zoe in a home I'd reclaim. I looked out at the backyard, the fairy lights still dangling, and felt a new boundary take root, not just financial, but emotional. They'd lost their hold on me, and I wasn't going back. The kitchen table was strewn with Zoe's colored pencils, and my laptop, a Monday morning a week after the party. Sunlight spilled across the floor, and I felt a quiet strength as I opened my email. The client contract I'd been chasing, the one I'd kept secret even from Zoe until it was certain, had come through. A major tech firm wanted my designs for their rebrand, a six-figure deal that would secure our future. I grinned, my fingers tapping the table, and called Zoe over. "We did it, kiddo," I said, showing her the email. Her eyes lit up and she threw her arms around me, her laughter filling the room. I spent the day sketching ideas, my pen moving with a freedom I hadn't felt in years. Each line felt like a reclaiming, not just of my work, but of my name, my worth. For so long, I'd been Leona the helper, defined by Mom and Paige's demands. Now I was building something for me, for Zoe. I contacted a local youth art program, one I'd always admired, and offered to fund a scholarship in my name, not my family's. "Let's give kids a chance to shine," I told the director, my voice steady. She thanked me, her excitement mirroring mine. Zoe sat nearby, drawing a superhero version of me, her tongue poking out in focus. "You're gonna be famous, Mom," she teased, holding up the sketch. I laughed, but her words sparked something. I wasn't just escaping my family's shadow, I was creating a legacy on my terms. I called Sarah and Mia, sharing the news, and they insisted on dinner to celebrate. "You're unstoppable now," Mia said, her voice warm through the phone. I smiled, my chest light, no longer weighed by obligation. As evening fell, I stood in the backyard, the fairy lights now packed away. The space felt new, like it belonged to me again. I thought of Mom and Paige, probably on their cruise, oblivious to the life I was building. Their betrayal had broken something, but it had also freed me. My designs, my daughter, my chosen family, they were my name now, not the one I'd been forced to carry. I hugged Zoe close, her warmth grounding me, and knew I was finally home. The house was quiet that evening. Zoe asleep upstairs, her sketchbook open to a drawing of us together. I sat on the couch, a mug of tea cooling in my hands, the silence wrapping around me like a soft blanket. The fairy lights were gone, the backyard dark, but I didn't feel empty. For the first time I felt whole. I thought back to the party, to Mom and Paige's betrayal, to Zoe's fierce loyalty. Their plan to poison my cake to keep me from the cruise had been the final push I needed. I'd spent my life chasing their approval, giving pieces of myself until I was hollow. But now, I saw it clearly. My worth wasn't theirs to define. I leaned back, my eyes tracing the ceiling, and let the truth settle. Every dollar I'd given, every sacrifice I'd made, had been for a family that didn't see me. But Zoe did. Sarah and Mia did. My clients did. I thought of the scholarship I'd funded, the designs I'd create, the life I was building. My fingers brushed the laptop still open to the contract email, and I smiled. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I didn't need their apologies or their guilt. I needed me, whole and unapologetic. The tea had gone cold, but I didn't care. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the stars. They felt closer now, like I could reach them. I was 35, and for the first time I wasn't Leona, the doormat, or Leona, the bank. I was just Leona, artist, mother, friend. The peace wasn't loud or triumphant, it was quiet, steady, mine. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Family ties don't vanish cleanly, but I was ready. My worth was in me, in Zoe's laugh, in the lines I drew, in the people who chose me back. So, what do you think? Did I break free enough, or should I have done more? Have you ever had to cut ties to find yourself? Drop a comment below, share your story, I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more. You don't need to carry someone else's weight to shine. Keep building your own light, and I'll see you in the next one.